You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your Security Plus certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Secure integration patterns define how disparate systems and services communicate while minimizing risk. Whenever organizations connect databases, APIs, or third-party platforms, integration becomes a potential attack surface. Secure patterns emphasize strong authentication, encrypted channels, and explicit authorization rules for every connection. They also focus on limiting what each side can access, ensuring least privilege extends across integrations. Without careful design, integrations can create hidden trust relationships that attackers exploit. For example, a misconfigured API might allow lateral access into unrelated services. By treating integration boundaries as security critical, architects ensure that systems remain interconnected yet resilient against unauthorized access or unintended data exposure. Canonical data models provide a standardized representation of information exchanged between systems. Instead of translating data formats at every interface, a canonical model ensures consistency and reduces the chance of errors or information leakage during conversion. For example, a financial platform may use a canonical model for customer records, ensuring that all connected services interpret fields consistently. This reduces ambiguity, prevents mismatched assumptions, and minimizes the need for repeated transformation logic. Security benefits include fewer opportunities for injection attacks or data misinterpretation. By designing architectures around canonical models, organizations improve both interoperability and protection, creating predictable, validated communication channels. Service boundary hardening ensures that every integration point enforces security rigorously. Boundaries must validate who is making a request, authentication, what they are allowed to do, authorization, and how often they can interact. Rate limiting. For example, an external API may enforce OAuth tokens, check role-based permissions, and limit requests per second. This prevents brute force attacks, abuse, or resource exhaustion. Service boundaries are natural choke points where attackers will probe. Without strong controls, they become easy entry points. Hardened boundaries create confidence that only legitimate, authorized, and appropriately bounded traffic flows into internal systems, preserving integrity and availability at scale. Trusted Execution Environments (TEEs) provide hardware-backed isolation for sensitive computation. Within a TEE, code and data are shielded from the rest of the system, including even administrators. This makes them valuable for scenarios like financial processing, cryptographic operations, or privacy-preserving analytics. TEEs ensure that sensitive operations cannot be tampered with or observed by compromised operating systems. However, TEEs introduce complexity. Developers must adapt code for enclave execution, and performance may be affected. Architects should leverage TEEs selectively, applying them to workloads where assurance outweighs overhead. TEEs represent a specialized but powerful tool in an architect's security toolkit, reinforcing trust at the execution layer. Content validation and schema checks are critical safeguards at integration points. When one system passes data to another, it must be verified against expected structures, formats, and ranges. Schema validation ensures that malformed or malicious inputs cannot crash services or trigger vulnerabilities such as injection attacks. For example, a payment service should reject any request that does not conform exactly to its defined schema, rather than attempting to process it. By validating at the boundary, systems reduce their exposure to manipulation. Schema checks enforce discipline across integrations, ensuring data integrity and preventing external actors from abusing flexible or poorly validated input. Design choices about long-term data retention versus ephemerality shape security posture significantly. Some data, such as audit logs or financial records, must be retained for years to satisfy compliance. Others, like session tokens or temporary caches, should be ephemeral, erased as soon as possible to minimize exposure. Over-retention increases the footprint of sensitive data, giving attackers more to steal if systems are compromised. Ephemerality reduces that risk, but must be balanced with operational and regulatory needs. Architects must define clear retention policies, align them with compliance, and ensure systems enforce deletion. Thoughtful retention design minimizes unnecessary risk while preserving critical business functions. Backplane security refers to the protection of internal communications within service-oriented architectures or messaging systems. The backplane is the invisible glue message buses, service brokers, or orchestration systems that connect workloads. Because these are not exposed directly to users, they are often overlooked, but compromise here can allow attackers to intercept or alter system-wide traffic. Backplane protections include encryption, authentication, and monitoring of internal channels. For example, securing Kubernetes communication between control plane components ensures adversaries cannot hijack orchestration. Treating the backplane as a first-class security boundary ensures that internal trust assumptions are validated, not blindly accepted, across modern distributed architectures. Circuit breakers and graceful degradation patterns prevent cascading failures across services. A circuit breaker monitors interactions between services and halts calls when repeated failures are detected, preventing overloading a failing dependency. Graceful degradation ensures that even if components fail, the system continues to operate in a reduced mode rather than crashing completely. For example, an e-commerce site might disable recommendations if a microservice fails, but still allow checkout. These patterns are resilience mechanisms, but they also serve as security considerations. They prevent denial of service conditions from propagating internally. By embedding them into architecture, designers ensure failures remain contained and manageable. Caching is a valuable performance tool, but it carries security implications. Cached data may expose sensitive information if stored insecurely or retained too long. Attackers can exploit stale caches to retrieve outdated but still sensitive records. Shared caches, such as in multi-tenant systems, risk data leakage between tenants. Secure cache design includes encryption, strict expiration, and partitioning. For instance, session tokens stored in cache should expire quickly and be invalidated after logout. Architects must treat caches as sensitive stores, subject to the same protections as primary systems. By managing cache carefully, organizations achieve performance benefits without introducing new risks. Secure error handling avoids leaking sensitive information through failure messages. Poorly designed systems may reveal stack traces, database queries, or configuration details in error responses, giving attackers useful reconnaissance. Secure error handling ensures messages remain generic to external users, while detailed diagnostic logs are captured privately for administrators. For example, an application should display invalid request rather than exposing the SQL statement that failed. Architects must ensure error handling policies are applied consistently across services, preventing accidental leaks. By controlling what failures reveal, organizations deny attackers valuable intelligence while still enabling operators to troubleshoot effectively. Multi-tenancy isolation requires architectural forethought when services are shared across customers or business units. Each tenant must be logically and, where necessary, cryptographically isolated from others. Techniques include account segregation, dedicated namespaces, and strong access controls. Storage systems must enforce strict partitioning to ensure data cannot leak across boundaries. Without proper isolation, one tenant's compromise can cascade into another, undermining trust. Multi-tenancy must also be validated continuously, as misconfigurations are common sources of leakage. By embedding isolation into the design, architects balance efficiency with security, ensuring that shared infrastructure remains trustworthy and compliant for all users involved. Ultimately, integration and internal communication design represent some of the most critical security boundaries in modern architectures. Every handshake, every schema check, and every cache policy influences systemic resilience. Secure design ensures integrations do not expand attack surfaces unnecessarily, but instead become well-governed, observable, and resilient links. Failure to address integration boundaries often leaves organizations vulnerable to subtle but devastating weaknesses. Strong architectural choices in these areas reduce risk by minimizing implicit trust and ensuring transparency across data flows. Integration design is not simply technical plumbing. It is a defining element of trustworthy and sustainable security architectures. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Authentication, delegation, and token exchange patterns allow secure interactions across distributed systems without requiring users to log in repeatedly. Frameworks like OAuth provide ways to delegate access through tokens, enabling services to act on behalf of users without exposing credentials. JSON Web Tokens, JWTs, are commonly used to carry signed claims, ensuring integrity while reducing session complexity. These models minimize password reuse and provide short-lived, verifiable tokens that can be validated quickly. However, they require strict expiration and revocation policies to prevent misuse. Architects adopt these patterns to unify identity across environments, making integration more seamless, while still maintaining strong trust assurances. Rate limiting and throttling mechanisms are critical to mitigating abuse and enhancing resilience. By capping the number of requests from a user or system within a defined window, services can prevent brute force attempts, credential stuffing, or denial of service attacks. Throttling also ensures fairness, protecting back-end resources from being overwhelmed by a single client. From an architectural perspective, these controls belong at gateways and service boundaries, where they can scale with demand. Rate limiting reduces operational strain and increases predictability, ensuring availability under stress. Without it, even well-secured services can collapse under traffic surges, whether intentional or accidental. Observability hooks and traceability across distributed transactions ensure that integration remains transparent and diagnosable. In microservices or multi-tier systems, requests may span numerous services, making failures difficult to isolate. Observability hooks insert unique identifiers into each transaction, enabling correlation of logs, traces, and metrics across boundaries. This design choice is not only operational, but also security relevant, as it helps detect anomalies and pinpoint misuse. Traceability ensures accountability, tying actions to identities and contexts. Without it, attackers could hide within the noise of distributed transactions. Observability makes integrations auditable and resilient, ensuring teams can see and validate what occurs across complex flows. Anti-replay protections and nonce usage are essential in message and API designs. A replay attack occurs when an attacker captures valid traffic and retransmits it to gain unauthorized access. To prevent this, systems incorporate nonce's unique, single-use numbers or timestamps to ensure each message is distinct and valid only once. Token-based systems must also enforce expiration and revocation to limit exposure. Without replay protection, even strong authentication can be undermined, as captured credentials or tokens remain usable. By embedding anti-replay mechanisms into architecture, organizations ensure that trust cannot be abused through duplication, preserving integrity across distributed communications. Upstream and downstream trust responsibilities shape integration safety. Upstream systems must validate incoming data before passing it downstream, while downstream systems must assume nothing and verify data again. This redundancy ensures that malicious inputs do not slip through weak validations. For example, an API gateway may enforce schema validation upstream, but the receiving service must also check inputs to prevent injection attacks. Clear boundaries define which layer is accountable for which protections, reducing ambiguity. Without this discipline, integrations may rely on assumptions that adversaries exploit. Strong architecture ensures validation occurs at multiple points along data flow paths. Data minimization patterns reduce the sensitive footprint across systems by transmitting and storing only what is necessary. Instead of sharing entire user records, services may pass anonymized identifiers or truncated fields. Tokenization replaces sensitive values with surrogates, limiting exposure while preserving functionality. Minimization reduces the blast radius of a breach and simplifies compliance obligations. For example, a service handling analytics may not need personal identifiers at all. By designing integrations with minimal data exposure, architects shrink the attack surface while still supporting business needs. Minimization is a deliberate design choice that embeds privacy and security into the architecture. Secure queuing and message persistence strategies protect sensitive data within messaging systems. Queues often hold data in transit, and without encryption or access controls, they become attractive targets. Secure designs enforce encryption at rest and in transit for queued messages, while also applying strict permissions on producers and consumers. Persistence strategies must also consider retention messages should expire or be deleted once delivered to minimize exposure. In multi-tenant platforms, logical separation ensures that one tenant cannot consume another's messages. Treating queues as critical data stores rather than transient buffers ensures architectures remain resilient and trustworthy in distributed communication flows. Cross-domain communication constraints, such as those enforced conceptually by cross-origin resource sharing (CORS), prevent services from being accessed by unauthorized origins. In browser-based contexts, CORS restricts how scripts from one domain interact with another, limiting data leakage. In broader architectures, similar constraints apply. APIs must restrict which clients can interact, ensuring only trusted domains gain access. Without cross-domain controls, integrations may be abused by malicious clients masquerading as legitimate. Architects embed these constraints at gateways and services, explicitly defining what is allowed and rejecting anything outside policy. Such constraints reinforce trust boundaries, ensuring integrations remain scoped and controlled. Design time policy testing and contract validation confirm that integrations behave securely before they reach production. Policies for access, data formats, and rate limits should be tested against realistic scenarios, ensuring enforcement aligns with intent. Contract validation ensures that services exchanging data honor agreed schemas and behaviors. For example, a service that expects certain fields must reject inputs missing or altering those fields. Testing at design time prevents unsafe assumptions from propagating into production systems. These practices emphasize prevention over correction, ensuring security flaws are caught during planning. Strong architecture incorporates validation as early as possible to reduce systemic risk. Runtime policy enforcement extends architectural discipline into live environments. Gateways, service meshes, and orchestration platforms continuously evaluate traffic against defined policies. This includes validating identity tokens, checking encryption status, and enforcing routing rules. Runtime enforcement ensures controls remain consistent across environments, catching deviations before they become breaches. Unlike static validation, runtime mechanisms adapt dynamically to changing conditions, such as scaling events or shifting workloads. Without runtime enforcement, even well-designed policies may drift or be bypassed under operational stress. Embedding enforcement into architecture ensures policies are not just written but continuously lived, creating resilience under evolving conditions. Versioning strategies reduce compatibility friction while preserving security. When services evolve, older versions must sometimes remain available for backward compatibility. However, this introduces risk if outdated versions lack modern protections. Versioning strategies define clear life cycles, deprecating insecure versions while providing time for clients to adapt. For example, APIs may support v1 and v2 concurrently, with v1 phased out under strict timelines. Strong versioning avoids abrupt disruption while ensuring weaker interfaces are not left open indefinitely. Architects must balance compatibility with security rigor, embedding version discipline into design to sustain long-term resilience in dynamic ecosystems. Ultimately, secure integration is both a design and operational discipline. At design time, policies, contracts, and validation embed resilience into every flow. At runtime, monitoring, enforcement, and version control sustain integrity under changing conditions. Integration is often where complexity hides, and attackers exploit gaps. By embedding strong patterns authentication delegation, anti-replay, minimization, and cross-domain validation architects ensure that interconnected systems remain trustworthy. Security cannot be assumed simply because components connect successfully. It must be proven across every transaction. Secure integration transforms architecture from fragile connections into hardened, observable, and resilient ecosystems that serve business needs while resisting compromise. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.